Okay, let's dive in. So this deep dive, it's built right from the sources you shared with us, and it's taking us straight to Japan to uh, really get into a major challenge they're grappling with.
Yeah, and it's a challenge that feels, well, incredibly immediate. Japan's population is aging super rapidly,
Right.
and at the same time, their birth rates are critically low, actually falling faster than anyone predicted.
It's a demographic picture. It's just a wow.
Unlike almost anywhere else. You look at the numbers for 2024, over 36 million people in Japan are 65 or older,
Hmm.
and the forecast. By 2065, that group could be nearly 40% of the entire population.
And, well, that creates a huge immediate problem. Elder care.
Yeah.
There just aren't enough people to provide care. We're typing a really severe labor shortage. Get this. For every single person looking for work in elder care, there are more than 4 job openings.
4 jobs for every applicant in elder care.
Exactly.
That's incredible. The government figured they'd be short, what was it, 370,000
Well,
caregivers?
just by 2025, yeah.
Okay.
That's soon. And, Japan has increased its foreign workers overall, a record 2.3 million total in 2024. But
But it barely scratches the surface in aged care. Less than 3% of that workforce is foreign labor.
so traditional labor sources,
Yeah.
they just can't fill a gap this enormous.
Right. Which is why Japan is pushing hard, really hard, on another path, one where they actually have some unique strengths. Technology,
Yeah.
specifically AI and robotics. And it's not just, a few interesting gadgets. It's becoming a core part of their national strategy to deal with this crisis.
Okay, so that really sets our mission for this deep dive then.
Yeah.
We need to unpack these sources you gave us, understand exactly how Japan is using tech here,
Look and why they're maybe uniquely positioned to do this.
but also face the big challenges, the ethical questions head on.
Exactly. And see what lessons, if any, Japan's experience might hold for the rest of us as populations age globally.
Okay, let's get into the specifics then. It's pretty clear from the material this isn't just like random adoption of tech.
Mhm.
It's tied into a much bigger national vision.
Absolutely. It's woven into something they call Society 5.0.
Society 5.0.
Yeah, the core idea is building a super smart society. Think of it as deeply integrating the digital world, AI, IoT, robotics, with the physical world
Yeah.
to tackle these really fundamental societal problems, like this demographic crunch.
So it's ambitious, a real strategic push. And crucially, the sources emphasize the goal isn't replacing human caregivers, right?
No, definitely not. That comes through very clearly. The stated aim is for technology to help humans, to augment them, support them.
Okay, so tech as a helper, given that, what kinds of specific technologies are we actually seeing being used or developed for elder care over there? What stood out in the sources?
Well, it's quite a range, actually, from relatively simple stuff to really complex robotics.
And I think this is where it gets particularly fascinating. There's one example that really jumped out, AIREC. Tell us about AIREC.
AIREC, yeah, it's pretty remarkable. It's a humanoid robot prototype, about 5'7" tall, being developed at Waseda University. And its whole design focus is on tackling those really physically demanding tasks, the ones that often lead to injury or just burnout for human caregivers.
Like what sorts of tasks?
Well, things like lifting patients safely, helping them sit up in bed, maybe even preparing simple meals, those repetitive, strenuous actions.
Okay.
And AIREX isn't simple. It's got AI, pressure-sensitive fingers for, careful handling, and they're even working on emotion recognition features.
Motion recognition, wow. But it's still a prototype.
Still a prototype, yeah. The expected cost is around $67,000 and may be available sometime around 2030, so it's still a ways off and quite an investment.
$67,000.
Sure.
Yeah, that's a serious chunk of change for any facility.
Mm.
But AIREX is kind of the high end, right? There are other technologies mentioned, maybe less traumatic, but still important.
Oh, absolutely. Lots of other things. Monitoring systems, for instance, are becoming much more common.
Like what?
Like simple sleep sensors you just place under a mattress. They can alert staff if a resident is trying to get up during the night.
Ah, okay. So it reduces the need for constant physical checks.
Exactly. Fewer disruptive nighttime rounds lets staff focus their attention where it's most needed. Maybe even help staff get better rest themselves.
Makes sense. What else?
Mobility aids are a big area. Robotic devices designed specifically to help with walking or standing up from a chair, or maybe safely transferring someone from their bed to a wheelchair.
Physical support. But care isn't just physical, is it? What about the social or emotional side? Loneliness is a huge issue.
Yeah, and they're looking at tech for that too. That's where you see things like companionship robots.
Like Piero. The seal.
Exactly like PRO, the therapeutic baby seal robot. It's designed to offer comfort, reduce loneliness, maybe even encourage some simple interaction or gentle exercises.
That really speaks to trying to address that isolation factor.
Mm.
And are there robots helping staff sort of behind the scenes?
Yes, logistics robots too, becoming more common in hospitals and larger care homes. Robots like Moxie, for example. Yeah, it can do things like deliver supplies, ferry lab samples around, take medications where they need to go, basically the errand running stuff.
Which frees up nurses and caregivers from, running around the building all day.
Right, so they can spend more quality time actually with the patients or residents. Now, something I found really interesting is why Japan seems so well positioned to be a leader here. What is it about Japan that makes them perhaps uniquely suited for this robotic approach to care?
Yeah, the sources point to a couple of key factors, it seems. One is just their deep expertise in building the robots themselves, their hardware mastery.
Exactly. Japan has this long, rich history and incredible skill in industrial robotics, precision manufacturing.
Yeah.
While maybe other countries are more focused on the AI software side,
Right.
Japan has that foundational strength in building the actual physical machines. Reliable bodies, complex mechanics, the kind you need for robots interacting safely in tricky human environments like a care home.
So they can build the things. What's the other big piece?
Culture. Cultural acceptance seems to be a really big differentiator.
How so?
Well, compared to maybe some Western perspectives, in Japan, there often seems to be a view of robots more as like helpful partners, sometimes even as characters, not just cold machines or job threats.
And you can immediately see how that cultural mindset would make something like PARO, the therapy seal,
Yeah.
much more easily accepted, maybe even welcomed in a care setting than it might be elsewhere.
And this whole push, it's not just happening organically. There's real government backing, a clear national plan driving it.
Which brings us back to that Society 5.0 idea, setting the overarching strategy.
It really does. The government is actively promoting the development, the adoption of these care robots, and they're putting serious money behind it.
Like the $100 billion plan for AI-powered hospitals you mentioned.
Exactly. That's a huge commitment. It signals how seriously they're taking this.
And they're also looking at regulations, trying to make them more flexible to help this innovation along.
Yes, trying to smooth the path for getting these technologies developed and deployed. And there's an interesting side note, too, about learning from defense tech investment. Things like advanced navigation for autonomous systems, secure communications, complex coordination research in those areas is actually finding applications in civilian healthcare robotics.
So, defense research potentially speeding up elder care robots.
It seems so. Bit of unexpected synergy there.
Okay, it's clearly not all smooth sailing. The sources definitely highlight some major hurdles on this path.
Oh, for sure. Cost is a huge one. We mentioned AIREC at $67,000.
Yeah.
That's just prohibitively expensive for many places, especially smaller independent care facilities. The initial investment is a massive barrier.
And even if a facility could afford the robots, are the potential users, the elderly residents, ready for this kind of high-tech interaction?
That's the whole digital divide issue. A significant number of older Japanese citizens just aren't comfortable with complex digital technology. They didn't grow up with it.
Right.
So introducing and getting them to effectively use these advanced robots, that can be a real challenge in itself.
And while we talked about general cultural acceptance of robots, does that hold up when it comes to really personal, intimate care?
That's where it gets complicated. The sources do point out that social acceptance, specifically in the context of personal care, is still, it's still a work in progress.
Yeah.
Many older people, and their families too, might still have a strong preference for a human caregiver for certain tasks.
Yep.
Robots might feel less empathetic, maybe less understanding.
And probably the most critical challenge, given what these robots might be doing, lifting people, helping them move, has got to be reliability, right? Safety.
Absolutely paramount. You're talking about technology used in direct physical contact with potentially frail individuals. The standard for safety, for reliability, has to be incredibly high. Any malfunction, any error could have really serious consequences. So that means rigorous testing, fail-safes, constant monitoring. It's a huge engineering and safety challenge.
And thinking about all these challenges, cost, acceptance, reliability, it naturally leads into the ethical questions. These are pretty profound when technology enters such a personal space.
They really are. It's a complex ethical landscape to navigate. One of the big worries is about reduced human contact.
Right, if robots take over more tasks.
Does that mean seniors end up with less interaction time with actual people? Could it accidentally lead to more loneliness, more social isolation, even as physical needs are met?
That's a really important human cost to consider. What about privacy? These things must have sensors, cameras.
Exactly. Privacy is a massive concern. Robots equipped with cameras, microphones, various sensors, they're collecting huge amounts of potentially very sensitive personal data.
Yeah.
How is that data protected? How is it used? Who has access? These are critical questions that need robust answers.
And what about the interaction itself? Does using certain robots impact a person's dignity?
That's another key ethical point, the question of dignity. Could some robot designs or the way they interact feel, I don't know, demeaning or maybe overly simplistic, childish even, to an elderly user?
Yeah, undermining their sense of autonomy or respect.
Potentially, yes. And then there's the really thorny question of accountability.
Meaning, if something goes wrong. If a robot makes a mistake, causes harm.
Who's responsible? Is it the company that made the robot, the facility that deployed it, the software programmer, the human caregiver who is maybe supervising? Establishing clear lines of responsibility before these things are widely used is absolutely crucial.
So, okay, pulling all these threads together, the picture emerging from the sources isn't really robots replacing humans.
No, not at all. The consistent message seems to be collaboration, humans and robots working together. That's the vision.
So the idea is robots handle the tasks that are, say, physically demanding or repetitive or logistical, the stuff that's hard on human bodies or just eats up valuable time.
Exactly. Which then, theoretically, frees up the human caregivers to focus on the things that humans do uniquely well, the things machines can't do.
Like providing empathy, real companionship, handling complex communication, making nuanced clinical judgments.
All those essentially human aspects of care, that's where the human focus should be, supported by the tech.
And the sources really underline something important for making this collaboration work, don't they? Involving the end users.
Critically important. The need to involve the elderly users themselves and the human caregivers right from the design stage.
Why is that so vital?
To make sure the technology is actually practical, that it's easy to use for both the staff and the residents, and crucially, that it's designed in a way that feels respectful and maintains dignity. It can't just be engineers guessing what's needed.
Right, co-designing it, essentially.
Yeah.
So wrapping up this deep dive, it really feels like Japan is at this fascinating, maybe critical juncture.
Yeah. They're facing this unprecedented demographic crisis, and they're responding boldly by leaning heavily into AI and robotics.
But it's not a simple tech fix approach. They seem to be trying to navigate this really complex path, balancing the drive for technological innovation with that fundamental need for compassionate, human-centered care.
And because Japan is kind of at the forefront of this extreme aging trend, their experience here, it's like a potential glimpse into the future for many other countries.
A potential roadmap, you could say.
Maybe.
Yeah.
The lessons they're learning now, what works, what doesn't, the ethical knots they're trying to untangle that knowledge is going to be incredibly valuable for other societies around the world as they face their own, maybe less extreme, but still significant aging challenges. So when you think about it, what does this all mean for you listening?
Yeah, as Japan pioneers integrating robots into perhaps the most human service imaginable, caring for our elders, it really forces us all to think, doesn't it? It raises a fundamental question for you to consider. When technology moves this deeply into the personal spheres of our lives, what lines do you think should absolutely never be crossed?